All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor, commissioners, staff, members of the public. We're so glad to have you here. We have our last participant has just arrived, so we're going to go ahead and get started. This is a workshop on the Transportation Impact Fees Ordinance for the City of Panama City. We're going to begin with some opening remarks and then a brief presentation by the Kimley Horn professionals, just kind of a refresh of what is being proposed. And then we'll turn it over to the elected officials for a time of deliberation amongst themselves, and then obviously question of staff, and then we're obviously most excited about hearing from the public as well. So earlier I had a question from Commissioner Hughes, and I thought it was a very fair question because I didn't have the answer to it. It's kind of just, the efforts in this, like where did some of this begin? And so, and we have had quite a bit of transition on the commission over the last few years. And so since at least 2020, following the hurricane, the City Commission has discussed the general fund funding philosophy during each budget process. There was a consensus with the prior commission at least to move towards a fee-for-use revenue model. This included relying less on ad valorem revenue and more on merchant fees, state revenue sharing, half-cent sales tax, etc. Assessments such as fire, stormwater, and dredging, quality of life or parks, culture, and recreation fees, and also transportation impact fees. As such, staff proposed funding a transportation impact fee study in the fiscal year 2024 budget. That study was funded and initiated and approved by the Commission during fiscal year 2024. A final draft of the study was completed in December of 2024, although updates have been made as late as last month. And a series of public participation through roundtables and workshops has happened over the last 6 months, leading us to this workshop with the new Commission today, and then depending on their desired direction moving forward, with a final reading scheduled tentatively for July 22nd of 2025. I will note we're joined by Vincent Spar with Kimley Horn, PE, who was one of the primary folks that led the efforts on this, and he does have a very brief presentation for the Commission and the staff and the public today before we turn it over to our elected officials. So Donald, if you can go ahead and start that, and then Kimley, Vincent, please make sure you just get close to that microphone so that everybody can hear you, sir. All right, Donald, you're up.
All right. Thank you, City Manager. I will try to be pretty quick through here, but happy to go back to these slides at any point if we have questions pertaining to any of the particulars that are presented herein. A few things we want to touch on. Background, timeline, Mr. Hayes just kind of broke through a little bit, but I'll just show some of the various steps along the way, talk about the actual state statute that governs the development of impact fees, and then talk about how these fees can be applied after the fact by the city. So getting into the background here, the Growth Management Act of 1985 did require local governments to identify sources of funding for capital improvements. Existing tax revenue was deemed insufficient. Obviously, without income taxes, the state of Florida has to find other sources to develop those funds and ultimately pay for the infrastructure that we need. Impact fees do address a growing community in a more targeted way in terms of asking for the funding for those capacity improvements from new developments that are going to add new traffic volumes to the roadway, as opposed to ad valorem taxes that take it out of the existing population's property taxes. Impact fees may not be used for operation, repair, and maintenance, strictly for capacity, and there's a few sort of quasi-capacity improvements we'll talk about at the end, but it does have to be directly or indirectly related to capacity, which does not include the operation and maintenance costs. Can't be used to pay off debts or to fund previously approved projects, and that is projects that have approved funding. So there can be projects that are identified, but not projects where a dollar source has already been assigned to that project. So they can't be used for those projects where funding's already sort of been allocated and then moved elsewhere. They do have to be sort of a new commitment of money. They are different than other fees, such as utility fees or concurrency. They're collected from new development as a one-time fee, like I mentioned, and then just sort of note there at the bottom, they are assessed based on the number of units or the square footage. Ultimately, those are just independent variables in the calculation of how many trips is a new development expected to generate. And the why now question, Jonathan, Mr. Hayes mentioned, but effectively, we as a city have identified a need to fund these capacity improvements. And over a lot of years, we haven't been doing so, and the capacity constraints are apparent, I think, to most folks who live here. And so identifying the fact that there is this increase in development and the infrastructure necessitated by that growth can be funded through these impact fees. We put down here dozens of jurisdictions around the state utilize impact fees. That number probably is closer to 100, but we did want to be a little bit conservative with that. The fact of the matter is a lot of developers have come into town and been surprised that they weren't being charged impact fees at all. The timeline on this project in particular, developing this impact fee study, as Mr. Hayes mentioned, we launched it in March of last year, kind of conducted the comparative review of other impact fees in the general area in April, did a lot of calculations, background data, and then drafted a report in about September. We briefed the planning board in October and November, went to commission January, February this year, and since then I've had a few workshop roundtables. We did revise the draft report last month. In large part, that was to kind of circle back on a few of the particular land uses where we, on second look, third look, discovered there were very few data points for those. So one, for instance, was the movie theater data point. There was really only one trip generation data point for that, so we didn't feel like that was really data that was worthwhile. And so we pulled that use out of the report, and ultimately, what that means is that if a movie theater were to come in and apply for development, the development of a fee for that would be done on the basis of some of the other more general uses, and it would be at the discretion of city reviewers. And we also prepared a cost to develop comparison for city review in last month. And today, here we are at this workshop. So the statute and methodology, the biggest thing to know from the Florida statute about impact fees is that they have to be proportional and they have to have a rational nexus with the need for capacity, meaning the cost assigned to any developer, any applicant, has to be proportional to the actual number of trips that will be generated by that development. The impact fees also have to have a rational nexus with the expenditure of those funds, which basically, this is why we split the city into sort of Panama City North and Panama City proper, was to say that those fees that are collected from any new development in one of those areas should be assigned generally in that same area. They do not have to be, exactly at point A where development's coming in, but they need to be in that general area where their impacts, the impacts of the trips from that development may be felt on the network. Here's sort of an overview of the calculation. I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty details of every one of these calculations, but just suffice it to say that the actual fee that is assigned for each of these uses is based on the capacity consumed by any new development, the demand generated, in other words, times the cost of that capacity, meaning how much does it cost to build a new lane mile of traffic to accommodate the new vehicles. And there is a credit that's applied at the end that accounts for gas tax credits, fuel efficiency in some cases, and ad valorem credits, meaning how much the city already using for capacity improvements that shouldn't be double counted here. Just a quick note, that capacity consumed, where we're thinking about the trips generated by any new development, does include a reduction for what we call pass-by trips. So a coffee shop where you don't expect every trip to the coffee shop to be a brand new trip on the network. A lot of them are somebody who was already passing by. Those don't get counted against that new applicant in this calculation. So that is built into the calculation. Same deal for gas station. A lot of these uses that capture a lot of pass-by traffic, they already get a credit for that in the calculation. Here's sort of a breakdown of each of those individuals, and I kind of just left this here so that we could come back to it and talk to it if anybody wants to get into the weeds of the calculations. And finally, the application of impact fees, how can these dollars be used? So there's a list here of about 9 different uses. There's other things that can be considered on a case-by-case basis, but these are the ones that we sort of share with our partners. They can be design plans, construction plans. They can be right-of-way acquisition for capacity improvements. They can be construction of new through lanes, of course. They can be construction of turn lanes. Those do add capacity to the network as well. If you are constructing a bridge, certainly that can be involved in a capacity improvement. The installation of traffic control devices, signals, roundabouts, et cetera. Intelligent transportation systems, that's sort of the technological things that we apply to our signals, be it coordination along a corridor, some various uses that you can apply technology with a signalized network to improve the overall capacity of the area. Those can be included. Construction of curbs, medians, and shoulders where they're shown to add capacity to a road or a network. And then park and ride lots. So that's kind of a little bit of a quirky one, but technically speaking, if you are facilitating the reduction of demand on the network by providing somewhere where 4 cars can be reduced down to 1, you are actually contributing to improved capacity on the network. So that's all I got. Just wanted to run through that quick. I know that was fast, but happy to answer any specific questions as they relate to that or anything else.
Yep, I'd like to ask Mr. Fuller, the Director of Development Services, to highlight some of the changes that we've recently made to the ordinance as it was first publicized back in January based on the feedback that we've received through the elected officials, but also the multiple workshops and roundtables that I held. Mr. Fuller?
Sure, happy to. So yeah, based on the feedback we got during those workshops and roundtable discussions, one of the revisions we made to the ordinance was to provide an exemption for single-family homes on the existing lots of record. The credit, and a credit will be provided for any home on an existing single-family lot of record that's less than 2,400 square feet. Any single-family home greater than 2,400 square feet will be required to pay the impact fee, but less than 2,400, you're not. And that's in an effort to try and help address that missing middle housing, which, if y'all remember, when we had the neighborhood plans done several years ago, one of the big points that came out of that was try to encourage more missing middle housing. Another revision was to provide an exemption for affordable housing as defined by state statute, and to exempt accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, that are less than 1,200 square feet from paying the impact fee. We also added a revision to provide a credit for non-residential uses previously existing on a parcel, provide a credit for public and municipal facilities. We added a provision stating that any decision rendered by the planning board concerning the impact fee would be appealable to circuit court. We provided a credit for development where a DO's been issued but hasn't necessarily been platted yet, or actually subdivided. And we've added a revision to provide a credit for a lot split as defined in the Land Development Code, where previously platted parcels were combined and someone wants to go back and split them up, they would get a credit from the impact fee in that case too. We also added a revision that the impact fee would not be assessed or collected sooner than October 1st of this year, a delayed collection date. And that's, we've discussed more, but those are the main changes we made. I also wanted to point out too that in the ordinance, this was in the originally proposed ordinance, is a provision in there for alternative fee calculations. If someone comes to the city and they disagree with the impact fee or how much has been assessed, they have the opportunity to propose or come submit their own traffic study and say, look, see, our traffic study shows we don't have to pay that much. We should be paying this much. And we'll review that and we can accept that as well. There's also a provision, again, this was in the original ordinance, but just thought I'd highlight it, is projects with existing development agreements that specify public improvements or public facility improvements receive a credit or not assess the impact fee in those cases too. Sweet Bay would be a good example there.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Mayor, at this time, I'll turn it over to you and the commissioners. If y'all have any questions for Mr. Spar or any of staff or Mr. Burke, they've been the ones that have really been down in the weeds, along with Mr. Fuller, over the last almost 18 months with this effort as directed by the commission. So, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Some of my questions are around changes of use, specifically Panama Grammar. That going from a school to an apartment complex or condos, some of my calculations are a couple $100,000 of impact fees. And so we're trying to get projects that are, the numbers are already really hard and interest rates are really high. And we're saying, make it work and we're going to add more fees on top. And so I've just been going through in my head, even let's say you take a house that's 3,000 square feet and you turn it into a coffee shop, it's like $60,000 in fees for that change of use, which for a coffee shop is just your toast. That's dire. So those are some of my just initial problems with the fees.
Yeah. And just to try to follow up with that, so the way the ordinance is currently written, so if it's an existing building and say it was a retail store and they want to establish a restaurant in this old retail store, they would get credit for whatever impacts that retail store had. So all they would have to pay is the difference, whatever difference there is between the restaurant and retail store.
Yeah, similar with water sewer impact fees.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Correct.
But with specifically with Panama Grammar, it was a school, and it maybe even doesn't as a church, which has a very low credit or fee because it's usually only churches are once a week kind of use, so very very low impact.
How about a grocery store?
Well, and we're trying to make grocery stores work and things like that on MLK grocery store. You want to put a small Publix in there's $350,000. Not all of these is a couple $100,000. And so I'm interested in some historic discounts. One, those are more complicated projects in my opinion because you don't know what you're pulling back when you open the walls up. And then maybe even, I don't know, I'm not an attorney, but maybe the attorneys can weigh in on certain districts, LMI districts having lower fees or discounts. A board costs the same whether you build a structure in Panama City Beach beyond the land cost or on MLK. And so we have to encourage somehow development in places that, don't have that momentum moving forward.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, if I may, one thing I would add too, and I meant to mention it was, one of the things too that was always in here is that, the commission reserves the right to make any kind of temporary modifications. Let's say y'all want to incentivize daycares, or because that's a real example that came out of a lot of these conversations. You could say, for the next 12 months, so kind of like sunset it, or the next 24 months or 36 months, no transportation impact fees whatsoever on any type of application for a daycare, or fill in the blank, anything that y'all would want to do. The commission is empowered to do that.
And I appreciate that. There's no certainty, especially if you're an investor, to be like, I'm going to go buy property in the hopes that the numbers work later if the commissioners then vote in favor for the reduced fees.
The market's going to tell you if you're going to build it or not. The government shouldn't have to back out of it.
Right.
Can you define capacity for us?
Effectively, how many vehicles can travel through one lane of a road in an hour is the base sort of unit we use for those calculations.
The Florida affordable housing, do we have that here? Because affordable housing is based on the statute. Do we have that here to talk to the public about?
I don't have the definition with me, but it is the definition in the statute.
Okay.
In section 420 or chapter 420 of the statute. I can try to look that up real quick while we're talking.
To my point, I think it'd be interesting even to see a discounted district mirroring the CRA districts because those are already established districts of blight and we're trying to make things work there. And so potentially giving stronger incentive to those people.
Any other questions of Mr. Spar?
A question that was raised, what do we do on areas where we don't own the road? There's a development that goes in and it's either an FDOT road or it's a county road.
Yeah, so part of what, you know, your role as the city are within your borders, but on county roads and state roads is, you know, there's still a responsibility to make sure that capacity exists within the network. So the actual improvements to a county road or to a state road are dictated by those jurisdictions, by those review agencies. So in effect, the cost of any improvements that are necessary for the actual access connection, a left turn lane in, a right turn lane in, a signal if you've got a large subdivision or something to that extent, those would be kind of channeled through those other agencies, through the county or through the state. But you as the city can still permit impact fee credits for those things. And that's one thing I did want to mention is impact fee credits can be awarded for any kind of infrastructure improvement or capacity improvement that a developer builds, even if it is not specifically to the city network. But generally speaking, even if you are on a city or pardon me, a county or state road, the city still has an obligation to maintain capacity in the network surrounding. So you would still collect fees there, if that answers your question.
It does. I think that, you know, we're talking about things that we need to address. That is a very large one. So if we've got, you know, everybody's got their own different standards. 23rd Street, that's an FDOT road.
Right.
98, 15th Street, as we call it, is an IDEC Avenue, is part of Harrison Avenue, is an FDOT road. And then in Panama City North, virtually every road is either a county road or a state road. So I guess the question, and I posed this to staff, is like, if that network is not willing to take a transportation fee in lieu of the permitting point, why would we collect it? You know, because all that's going to happen is if they require, take for instance, county, they require a traffic analysis done at the access point. And so if we assess the traffic impact fee and then they go and say, hey, you've got to do this different improvement, how does that correlate? Which is something that's unique specifically to Panama City North and our city in general, because we are kind of in a hodgepodge.
Aren't y'all doing the study for the county right now?
Kimley Horn is not now.
Okay.
Somewhat, Vinesh is doing that right now.
All right. Could you, instead of taking care of the road, could you make build a multi-use path in between the new subdivisions? Could that happen?
So there's some flexibility with multimodal improvements, and that would really be at discretion of staff, because there, you know, you can assert that, hey, if we put a path connecting, you know, you brought up the grocery store earlier, right? If we put a path connecting this subdivision to this grocery store, you are taking trips off the roadway network, right? So that is in some sense a capacity improvement. It's a reduction of demand. It does lessen the impact on the surrounding network. Yeah.
Okay.
Were there any in your study that you found that were there transportation impact fees in Northwest Florida that were higher than these ones that are proposed right now?
Michael, do you remember the specifics of that?
No, I think, so the problem with the ones we compared, or not problem, but the challenge with those we compared ours with, that most of the studies were done a decade ago. I think more recent one was even done, 3 or 4 years ago, where the cost of road construction was a lot lower than it is now. And that's what's, I think, partially driving the cost here is the road construction is such a large expense, or so expensive right now. And that's why you see ours higher. But I can tell you, just as an example, single-family homes, City Callaway has a transportation impact fee, where in 2008, they established their transportation impact fee in 2008. And at that time, the impact fee for a single-family home was about $3,000, if that gives you some sort of comparison. I know it's...
What was the tap fee for sewer, water and sewer? You know,
It was comparable to the city of Panama City's. I'd say tap fees, impact fees, Callaway would have been at about as $3,000 as well.
So while we're talking about the single family,
I'm sorry, can y'all please just make sure you're speaking to your mics? We're recording this so we can put it, thank you so much.
so while we're talking about the single family home, the proposed proposal that we're looking at does provide the exemption for SHIP.
Correct.
But if that is not the case, non-SHIP affordable or workforce housing, if I understand it correctly, they will pay the full fare.
Correct. If, and there's another exemption now in the ordinance, that anything under, a single-family home under 2,400 square feet does not pay it. So even if they don't qualify for SHIP, if they build something smaller than 2,400, they wouldn't pay it anyways.
Okay. What about for the apartment complex? That's another missing middle kind of property. 2 to 3 story apartments now pay $1,900 per unit unless subsidized and certified, again, falling back into the SHIP program.
Right.
If they're intended to build and keep costs for affordable and workforce housing, is there a provision in this proposal for that?
Mr. Burke, do you remember if our exemption, affordable housing exemption extends to multifamily?
It does,
was it
it
just-
does not, but I'm looking real quick. I believe the statute provides for that.
Okay, because as we talk about the potential for a grocery store project or a downtown, what is it, neighborhood downtown, the mixed use zoning, we're looking at apartments and retail and so forth. But in a district like Census Tract 16 and 17, our lower income census tracts, we want to attract builders to those neighborhoods and keep the units affordable. Perhaps we can extend some sort of a exemption or waiver, particularly to anybody who wants to build at that market level. You've got people in this community who work every day making $30,000 to $50,000, and they're in the gap. They're not at the very end where they can get subsidies, and even then, that's fewer than it was, before Hurricane Michael. So as we talk about bringing new development into those areas, I'd like to see us have a provision for the non-SHIP, non-federal funded projects that would also be affordable or workforce housing for the United Way calls this group ALICE, Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. And there's not an incentive, to my knowledge, for a builder to do that if they're not connected to a SHIP or a Fed program.
Just jotting some notes. But,
Could you read the
yes.
affordable? I asked them to read the affordable so we can all know what the standard is.
So affordable, as defined by the Florida statutes, means that monthly rents or monthly mortgage payments, including taxes and insurance, do not exceed 30% of the amount which represents the percentage of the median annual gross income of households. So 30% of the median household income would be defined as affordable.
And so that's above what many of our people earn in our community. Looking at a median wage of 30 to 50,000 in some parts of Ward 2 in the city of Panama City, that median wage is lower than the county as well.
Okay. So I'm just jotting down some notes here that I'd like to see a provision added that I guess extends that exemption or credit to, you said non-SHIP. What was the other term? You said non-SHIP. and non-
Certified, anything that's like HUD,
Yeah.
federal or state certified.
Gotcha. Workforce housing.
Yes, oh, that term, yes, workforce housing.
So where does 2,400 square feet come from? Is that, how did y'all pick that number?
There are various sort of thresholds in single-family home sizes that we use intermittently for studies like this. Technically speaking, ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, Trip Generation Manual, assigns the same rate of trips for every size house. They don't discriminate in that sense. But we use those based on some guidance we saw elsewhere in other documents just like this. It's kind of a loose estimate of kind of what these different house sizes may generate. You may have a house with its 2,400 square feet that might have 2-3 cars versus a 1,500 square foot house probably has 1, maybe 2.
Okay, so if I have a 2,000 square foot house and add a 500 square foot onto my living room, according to this, I'm going to pay an impact fee.
I don't know how the building permits for expansions would apply to impact fees. I'm not real sure how that
Would that be right?
assigned.
It says square footage in here.
Yeah, to make sure I understand. So you have an existing house, 2,000 square feet?
Add 500.
500 foot addition?
You're going to have to
Yes.
raise it up to the 20.
And I get my credit, but I'm still having to pay an impact fee, and I'm not putting any more cars on the road.
For 100.
Yes.
You would have to pay impact fee for 100. Could you get a credit up to
For an
24?
additional 100 square foot, yes.
Okay. But the question is, why do I even have to pay that? And we're not affecting the road system.
Why? I mean, can you talk a little bit about?
In a lot of sense, or in a lot of ways, this would come down to, okay, you may not add one, but now the next family that looks to buy that house may be one person bigger or one car bigger. It's about it's now a different structure, and it now accommodates a different size of family and a different number of trips potentially. But to your point, you're talking about a difference of a couple $100, not thousands, because you're not paying from zero. You're getting credit for everything you already had, and then you're paying the extra.
So I need to pay a fee for maybe when I sell my house in 10 years that somebody might have another car? That doesn't make any sense. Okay. If I build a house that is $250,000 and the payment is within the range of the affordable housing, does that give me a qualification of exempt? Or do I have to go through a HUD, like you were talking about, a program?
If it meets whatever the definition, if you're under that 30%,
But I don't have to have a license for it. I don't have to be designated as an affordable house builder. But if one of the builders that are sitting out here want to build that price range,
no, as long as you could demonstrate that you're under that 30%.
but that's based on the buyer, not on the house.
Okay.
How does it become affordable when it's not based on the price, it's based on 30% of their income? Is the way I understood it.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay. If I want to build a house that's 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,200 square feet, that's exempt? It's brand new. That's brand new, so I'm going to have to pay an impact fee, or no?
No, because you're 1,200 square feet.
Okay. But what qualifies me to be an affordable house builder? It's the buyer that is the 30%? Why are we worried about affordable housing?
You're trying to answer the question of why the 420, chapter 420 affordable housing incentive.
How do we tie that? Yeah.
That really goes back to Commissioner Lucas's question a moment ago, which kind of stumped me frankly, but I thought about it for a second. We included that in here in order to capture those kind of things, so that you've got a development that is meeting chapter 420, then you're going to have that. What you're talking about, you're going to have the ability to not be charged into that because in the instance of a specific affordable housing, because that typically is going to be the missing middle kind of housing, you're not going to trip the wire anyway. So you're not going to assess the buyer's ability to pay a fee based on their income because they're only going to be buying a 2,300 square foot home.
Or 1,200.
Yeah, or 1,200 in your example a moment ago, and I was pushing it to the top of it. So that was to encourage not only just for those folks who may be buying with the ship through that program or something like that, but also to encourage the folks who aren't going to qualify for that, but only because they've just exceeded that number. We want to, and, you know, my first experience with all this was in Walton County when we were doing all this kind of stuff. And you can imagine the difficulty of a housing over there. And we were always consistently trying to find places for teachers, firefighters, policemen, you know, the first responders in those groups to have affordable housing. Well, that's what this does. I mean, that recognizes that within that square footage area, you're probably meeting that demographic, and you're not charging them because you're wanting to incentivize folks to go and build within that missing middle, as we keep calling it.
Okay.
And I think maybe a way of looking at this is we've got, as a city, a market of folk. And not from a realtor standpoint, right? Not from a developer standpoint, but we've got X number of people we know demographically can't afford to buy our average cost of a home, be it an apartment or a single-family home, a townhome. So as we prepare this transportation impact fee, how do we factor in an incentive for builders and realtors to help those folks buy homes?
When we do these exemptions and incentives like these things, does that mean the general fund has to put money into the transportation fee fund, or does that mean that it's exempt and it's just never collected?
The latter.
The latter, so it's just never collected.
It's never collected. The you know, the reason that is, I wouldn't say it's not a concern, but ultimately the collection of the impact fees is something that you all, the city, will monitor and ultimately, you know, assign to projects based on how much is coming in. There's not a pre-diagnosed, we need to get $6 million this year, for instance, to then go and make the improvements we have planned. There may be some level of a wish list that gets developed that is like, hopefully the money goes towards this, but there's not a, hey, we absolutely have to get here. The other thing to remember with affordable housing is oftentimes the trip generation rates from those units, it tends to be much less. You know, there's use of transit, there's just fewer vehicles, that sort of thing. So the impacts wouldn't be as dramatic or substantial either way.
So the longer we've kind of gone through this process, I've kind of gone from the aspect of like, okay, let's figure out exemptions, to being like, let's just find something that's reasonable, that some people that can actually won't kill people trying to build projects that we're trying to build. I think one of the things is, you know, for me, from the standpoint of what Jonathan was mentioning earlier, as far as like going to a fee-based model, I don't know that that's where I'm at as far as like a fee-based model. What I do appreciate is a flat fee of certainty towards doing something. For instance, you know, if there's a stormwater impact fee that alleviates the property owner from having to build stormwater retention or stormwater detention or some type of on-site improvement because there's a public improvement being done from it, the same thing would go with transportation. If there is a transportation fee, then the network should be should be sustained by the transportation fee or the combination of things. And there shouldn't be another traffic analysis done on top of that, or a fee assessed from the county, or a fee assessed from FDOT. It should be something that's simple and easy to understand, so development has certainty. I think that is a bigger value than trying to find, you know, 100 different exemptions. The bottom line is this fee structure that's proposed, just to get to the heart of the matter, it is the highest in all of Northwest Florida. That's like, guys, like we can't compete. We are still in competition with other municipalities. We compete for jobs to come to our community. We compete for economic development and growth to come to our community. If we institute something that makes us non-competitive, why would someone not just go 2 blocks down the road and just put their business or their establishment there? So does that kind of make sense what I'm saying? So as I process more, as we walk through this process, I'm like, I don't know that a fee-based model is necessarily the piece. Does development ever pay for itself? I don't know that it does. I don't know that. It's definitely not. If this is the structure that's required to get, you know, a restaurant to pay for the impacts that it makes to a community, well, I don't know that it'll work. And so anyway, so I'll just kick off and get straight to the heart of the matter while we're talking about it. I don't necessarily think, I've gone through multiples, like doing CRA districts because we want to encourage development there, doing affordable housing things we want to encourage there, to the affordable apartment complex, I think is a great point. But we don't get any ad valorem or any other taxes off of that. And so now, so it's like, okay, how are we providing services for the 400 unit apartment complex that just came into the city? So there's a lot of things that this kind of led into, which have been incredibly educational for me. But I think for me, creating some type of stable certainty and knowing what will and what won't, what is proposed right now, I think we all know, if we really, in the brass tacks of it, if we laid that on anybody in Panama City North, we laid that any one of our CRA community redevelopment districts, which are already more risky to develop in than others, what are the chances are that we just wouldn't see anything? Or they would just stay in the county, or they would just go to Lynn Haven, or they just go to Callaway. I thought your point was very interesting, Michael, from the standpoint of Callaway implemented this in 2008. How many residential developments were seen in Callaway after 2008? Now,
you saw the market drop. That was not good. Right at the bottom.
so it was pretty terrible timing to implement. There wasn't I pulled up on property appraisals because I was trying to find one. The development that's right there off of 22. That's like the smaller homes or the smaller lots. They had 3 homes at 2008. By 2015, they still had about 6 homes. Was about it. It wasn't until 2018, after hurricane, that it really started kicking and going right around that time. That's a 10-year gap almost. And so I think if we're going to entertain a transportation impact fee, it needs to be something that's reasonable, that's not we can be responsible and not adversarial to development, I think is what I'm trying to communicate.
I agree.
Well, actually, I would say that was a great time for Callaway.
Yeah.
Because the market was going to drop anyway. And when it came back, the fees weren't in question.
Well,
Just saying.
in that same time though, how many other residential developments were built? Were there other ones in the community that they just didn't go to Callaway? I don't know the answer to that question because I haven't gotten to dive into it, but I thought that was a good example.
So you want less exemptions and complexity in the ordinance, but more certainty.
Yes.
And I'm saying that the exemptions are the certainty. So let's use a little coffee shop example. I'm changing a little house into a coffee shop. I'm not going to, if I saw the impact fee, I might never even pursue anything with staff to get a reduction of that cost, because I just don't, as a small developer, you just don't know all those things. Then we're relying on staff to clearly communicate it, bring it to us. The developer then waiting 60, 90 days in the hopes of us voting in favor of the exemption to make their project work. That's not certainty, right? That
Yeah.
person has no idea. They've never built a coffee shop before. This is their first time. They're trusting all these systems. And then we're going to spend, without that exemption, we're going to spend $5,000 of staff time to save them $5,000.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm very in favor of exemptions. And my other question is, a lot of other cities have a lot more land use categories that potentially, if we don't have expanded land use categories, we're going to have confusion. Car washes aren't on here. That's a high traffic business. Those kind of things. And I know we can add those later, but again,
Yeah, they're
with more
back in
certainty.
Well, let me clarify. I'm not saying no to exemptions, but what I'm saying is will somebody even know that there's an exemption? I think to your point of creating certainty, I got to go in and this is now a new piece of information I've got to process through. How many people know you can count your fixtures and get credit for it on your impact fees? How many people actually know that?
Well, that's just poor
That's
customer service.
that's staff's job to let them know that when they come in, is what I think now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's in here on a credit. It's the applicant's job to do it
Yeah.
and know about it, but if they don't do it, they don't get it in
Now,
a certain amount of time.
this is not a knock on anybody's team or anything. How well do you think we are at communication now when somebody comes into development?
10-4.
And so I think that's the piece that I'm concerned about by just creating, 1,000 different categories of exemption. Is it really ever going to get communicated, or is the person going to look at it I got to do a coffee shop, I got to do this? A great example is the grease trap.
Oh, yeah.
So like, that is a completely nuanced approach, like to know whether you can use a mechanical, whether you can't use a mechanical, like it's a tremendous amount of research for even a developer to understand what options are available to you in that. And so that's just one thing. I'm not saying that no exemptions. I'm not saying that particular piece, but the way I've started backing out to look at it is saying, what is a number that I know is not going to stop a coffee shop from getting in there? You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah, well, I don't think, yeah, so many hypothetical. My point would be like downtown north CRA, it's 25% off retail, right? And so
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Or daycares within half a mile of schools are X percentage off. You know, it's just a calculation. I mean, every time you add another thing like this, we're making development more complicated. Right, and that's and so we're talking about, a home costs $3,000 to build, but 60 days of waiting or 40 days of waiting is a lot more than that.
Well, development is complex.
Yeah.
And to your point, Josh, about the communication and where we are as a city communicating with our constituents, we're better this year than we were a year ago.
I agree.
We're better in some departments than we are in other departments. And I think we have an opportunity as we work on rolling out this transportation impact fee to make the communication of what's in it accessible. And that can be done, with technology as well as with good old-fashioned charts that say, well, if you're here, do this, and if you, yes, go that way, and so forth. Some engineer tell me what that chart's called, but one of those.
Flow chart.
Flow chart, yes. All right.
I'm not an engineer, though.
Okay, so if I get stupid rich and I want to go buy an entire road.
You're not?
I'm not, no. I don't know how that other half lives. And I want to buy the whole road, and the market is 2,300 to 2,700 square feet, because the market's really 400,000 to 700,000. Under this scenario, you're probably going to miss half of that development, because you're going to drive the cost up on the larger home versus a smaller home. And that's a market that we need. Okay, we also need the 200 to 300, but the pandemic changed the market for us and gave us some different values that we didn't have. So now I'm going to develop based on cost rather than market need potentially. And to me, that's a problem. So how do I not do that? Because it's about square footage again. I'm big on the square footage thing. I just don't understand why we got to be tied to that. Just build a house, pay a couple grand, be done, move on. But the market's going to dictate what I do rather than this document should. Does that make sense? Why would I want that?
What would you offer instead of square footage? Square footage when
Just
we're
a flat
building
rate.
for any size,
Yeah.
be it 1,200 or 15,000?
Well, if you're building 15,000, I want to see the house. But yes, because a car is a car is a car. It's not about the house. It's about what we're putting onto the road. And so a bigger house supposedly has more people in it. I mean, I know a person that just sold a 2-bedroom house where they got 5 cars. Okay? That's the problem, is the number of cars. So I don't understand the square footage part, but in that scenario that I gave you, I may not build some houses that our market needs. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think, you as the city will have the option, as Mr. Hayes mentioned, to be flexible and change how these exemptions are applied from time to time. If we need to be encouraging a certain, size or scale, that can happen on a temporary basis. As we were talking about before, the size of the house really does change the number of vehicles. On average, we can't get every single one of them right. It's not a strict science on a house by house basis. But I think we actually started, I believe, with one rate for all single family, and we changed it because of concerns about, hey, if a house only has 1,400 square feet, it's probably not generating the same number of trips as a house double that size with twice as many driving aged adults, right? So there's some approximation in there, and the actual numbers, of course, are a little bit fluid. But we do base this on some general assumptions about, at a certain scale, we expect this many driving age people to be in a house and, probably have full-time jobs or go to school every day, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Question, because this has happened in the county, so in practice, can you adopt the study and not adopt and set all fees to zero? Is that possible? And evaluate as you feel like you need the certain categories to be implemented?
You had, an example of that might be that the county has transportation impact fees.
They just set it zero.
And in 2013, I think it was, they decided that the market crashed and that impact fee was a hindrance to development. And so they dropped it to zero. So you do have the flexibility over the course of time to move. What you don't have the flexibility to do is to go above the rates that you set. Now, right, once you do that, you've got to have your studies done, you've got to wait the statutory time periods and all those kind
I
of.
don't think we're in any danger of that with this study.
No, I don't think. But think about it, if you ever go into a hotel, you'll see on the back of the door, the maximum rate is $700
Yeah.
a night for this Holiday Inn that you're paying $200 for.
Yeah.
That's because that's the most they can ever charge for that. So you can set your rates to be $1 million per home and charge them $7.
Can you do it based upon category? So instead of looking at exemptions from the standpoint of starting that way, are there certain things that we do not want to have in the city, or we feel like we have enough of, or we feel like, hey, there's more transportation that should be contributed to from this specific use, or?
As long as you have a rational basis for doing it, you have the ability to make those kind of changes.
Okay. The reason why I asked this question is because how many of you actually feel like this ordinance is close to something you could vote on one way or the other?
I think if we reduced the fees, it would be a lot more palatable.
Okay. That's where I feel like with the trying to understand what the county road, the state road element is, knowing what these things would even go and fund towards, the amount being so high, the different layers of exemptions, what should be exempted, what shouldn't be exemption. I feel like we're still really, really far off of like a consensus, I would say.
So you're suggesting that we go ahead and adopt the study so that it doesn't expire, legally speaking.
And just set it to zero for now until these things can be worked out. And maybe we take it category by category.
It's not a bad solution. I think it's probably a good
Maybe we
idea.
wait till the county's is over and let's kind of look at both
I
of
think
those.
that's what we should, because I think that may lead into that conversation on driveway permits. Like, is there a way for this to work working with the county? And if there isn't, then there's a way for us to say, hey, look, like, you're just going to have to do a traffic study here, but there's not going to be a transportation impact fee on top of that traffic study. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Yeah.
So how does the county currently deal with this issue?
They collect no transportation impact fee.
If I'm a developer and I want to put in a apartment complex, how does the county currently deal with this?
They do a traffic analysis, and then there is an assessment of improvements that need to come to that. Where it becomes problematic, as we've seen in Panama City North, is if you are on the tail end of the improvement that's needed, you could be faced with a larger than even this fee to be assessed to make those improvements. So for instance, if you've got enough trip counts at the intersection, it's good. But there is a point in trip counts in which there needs to be a red light. And so that red light could be mostly assessed on the last person
Kills the deal.
versus the whole thing, and then it kills the deal.
Or it can be the
So-
developer that has to do that, not the.
That's what the county does. The
Yeah,
county
the
forces the
county
developer to
doesn't
do
pay
it.
for that. That's the
Right.
developer that does that.
And so that recently happened, is what I'm talking about. There's
Right.
property in
Turn
Panama
lane.
City that was going to have an apartment complex, which was actually going to address some of the missing middle that we've talked about here tonight, and it now is not happening.
Because of this?
No, not us, because they had
Oh,
to
the
get
county.
access onto the county.
Okay.
And so their method, whatever method that was in that situation, the developer decided that was not something that was palatable to the developer. And so, as to my knowledge, that apartment complex is now not happening.
So given your example, what advantage do we have to wait as Commissioner Street is suggesting versus setting our own path.
Well, what I'm saying with this path, at least, you would know on the front end, there'd be no, hey, we bought the land, we're going through this, and then now all of a sudden we have this thing that pops up that says you can't, or you have to install a turn signal, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. One of the points of this is that capacity improvements are paid by somebody, period. Right? Somebody's paying for that. And so all this is, the root argument to all of this is who is paying for that? And currently, it's been the citizens of Panama City because it's been paid out of the general fund. And so all this does is proposes, well, hey, if you're coming in here and you're impacting the traffic into the area in which we live, then you should contribute to some of that impact. Now, the traffic impact fees, even currently set with what they have recommended to us, would not cover 100% of what we would need. And that's okay, because if we did that, we would absolutely kill development, right? Absolutely kill it. And that's not the goal here. The goal here is not to kill development. The goal here is to stop killing the general fund with traffic improvements. So when something happens, development comes in, and it's increased by, millions of car counts per year. Well, eventually, the road's going to need to be widened. Turn lane's going to need to be put in, or a traffic light gets put in. And the developer's long gone from that specific development. And we're still stuck holding the bag, so we have to pay for it. We have to pay. We recently paid $700,000 for a turn lane.
And that could have been in the development.
Could have been, but it wasn't.
Well, there's a policy that we could put, why don't we use the proportionate fair share? In our
I
code?
think one of the questions, though, is to ask, like, why wasn't it in the development agreement?
Why
I think
wasn't-
Michael can
yeah.
answer that question.
Same on the.
And I think it's
apartment
because there wasn't a
complex
traffic
on,
analysis
Wood Avenue.
done in conjunction with the county at that point.
We paid $2 million for a road,
I don't know,
3.9.
3.9.
3.9 for a road.
For Lindsay Crossing.
So my point is that that's coming out of the general fund, and as this commission, we have talked about trying to find ways to reduce the amount of money that is coming out of the reserve funds. When we're hit with $3.9 million because the developer built the road for us and now we're going to pay them for the road, that seems a little backwards to me.
So is there an example in Panama City proper in which this has happened?
Or what?
So we have two districts that are set here. Is there an example in Panama City proper where this has happened?
No, I can't think of it.
I mean, I've been here for 4 years, and I don't remember any capacity improvement that we've done inside of Panama City proper. All the examples are in Panama City North that I'm aware of. So like, that's kind of what I'm saying with, you can adopt that, you can say, hey, yes, you've completed this study, this is the study, this is the results of it, and you can set it to 0, and then maybe the first place you tackle is trying to figure out, okay, how does Panama City North need to work for, and it would include the county in the mix of that picture, possibly with their study. Or if they just say, hey, we're not gonna accept the study, we're not gonna do transportation impact fee, it may just be, there needs to be a traffic analysis done at the start of a project.
So Panama City proper, the apartment complex on Wood and 19th. That's an example of development order would have got a turn lane, fixed the road. We could have beefed up the intersection at 19th Street, done something. And that, because that developer is getting ready to have a major impact, that apartment complex on that little road right there.
But as far as we didn't pay anything.
We're
We're suffering through it.
Yeah.
So,
You know?
So one of the other things that I'll point out, especially with that example, because you're dealing with a state road right there, right? No, not off 19th. I'm sorry. I was thinking of the one off of 98 in Jinx, that apartment complex there. Because you're dealing with a state road, you're dealing with FDOT.
That's the one over by HCA.
And
It's behind HCA, yes, ma'am.
And so whenever you're dealing with FDOT, we have to go through the TPO, right? And so when we're dealing with the TPO, we have to rack and stack the projects that we want to accomplish in the TPO. And that process works out a lot faster if you bring money to the deal, so to speak. A great example of this is the Star Avenue 231 roundabout that FDOT is expediting for us. The city put in $2 million, the county put in $2 million, and I think originally it was supposed to cost $6 or $8 million, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think it was originally around 10 and it doubled.
Okay, it was like $10 million originally, and I think it wound up being like 24. And FDOT just picks up the rest because it was a project that they had already started, that we had already put money into, the county had already put money into, and now that project is coming to fruition to fix a capacity issue and a horrible intersection issue, right? So when you're thinking through, okay, well, I'd rather see 98 be widened, or I'd rather see, this specific type of signaling go in, maybe an AI system go in for signaling so that maybe the lights are actually synchronized. I don't know, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but the idea is that when you're thinking through capacity, when you are dealing with FDOT, if you want it done anytime within this decade, you have to bring money to the table. Because the malfunction junction is eating up all of the money that comes down from the state on the TPO.
Yeah, they haven't finished mine there yet.
Yeah.
To Commissioner Street's point, where are you on the yes or no? I think there's a lot of people out here that would love to have a voice, and I would like to say, let's stop and let's all get together and talk to the people that really are impacted. The builders, the contractors, the developers, the people that are going to really feel this, not people that are they're not involved in the industry. Because I feel like we could have a conversation and maybe find some common ground. But these numbers, they don't make sense when you have a higher acquisition cost for the dirt and then all your vertical and horizontal construction is up. They don't make sense, and it makes it unattainable. And we're already going with, it's all, my kids can't afford a house. And hopefully one day they will be able to, but right now it's too expensive. And all we're doing is adding layers to making it harder to buy. Apartment complexes, that's affordable housing today. That's, they're expensive, but you put two people in there and that's what's soaking up the non-$200,000 houses. And those are hard houses to build. That's what I was asking about qualifications, because they're hard to get to. And does it give you any exemption, or does it give you any help along the way if you have some credentials on it? I don't know. But I think if we did that, we get some answers from the public, specific, how does that work? We might get good answers, we might get no's. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear. Do we need any more vape shops in Panama City? I mean,
That's a
like,
personal
I think you could go category by category and figure out what we've got oversaturation of and what we don't, and start with that.
But that's market driven. That's not government driven.
Is that legally sufficient?
I mean,
I'm just saying, like, I mean,
that comes from the government, but the market ultimately is going to say yes or no to being able to build or not build. So I get a little credit over here, but if the market's not working, I'm not going to do it anyway.
And part of the challenge when we talk about markets, are we talking about the market of the existing constituents or the potential ones that are seen to be coming to Panama City North, right? And getting everything, well, not everything, but getting things lined up so that we can build up there when we still have great needs in Panama City proper, I think is.
Well, do y'all ever drive down 390 where you're right across from Lynn Haven Rec Center? Like the ball fields out there, y'all ever drive down that road 390, right? And I mean, there's some sections there where there's like a turn lane, but mostly it's just 2 lanes right there before you get to the bridge. You got Delwood Estates, and I forget the name, but there's like a couple of other communities back in there, like the
Derby Woods.
Yeah, Derby Woods. That's what I was thinking of. Derby Woods, not Delwood Estates. I'm sorry. I figured the realtor would know.
Meadows, all those.
Yeah, you know how hard it is to get out of those neighborhoods? It's incredibly hard, right? It's incredibly hard.
Yeah.
What I don't want is Panama City North to turn into something like that, where Star Avenue is, because that's the county road, where the city is constantly just buying roads right off of Star Avenue, and good luck getting onto Star Avenue.
Could we
I
put
mean,
the slide
and-
back up of what you can use this for? Is
In
that
same-
possible?
In
Yeah.
that same category,
Donald, please.
like,
that's the right
it's an FDOT road. So ultimately, FDOT's got to determine, no, 390 is.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's an FDOT road.
But Lynn Haven could have stepped in and said, hey, we would like to have a turn lane here, or we would like to see this, we'd like to see that. They could have, right? Along the
I
way.
mean, they could have requested, ultimately, it would have been to FDOT's.
Yes, and if you bring money, then you're usually going to engineer it and do it, right? So,
One of the first ones.
I think one thing to remember in Panama City North is, and, you know,
That's right.
Lindsay's Crossing is a great example. Would Lindsay's Crossings have been inside the city or would have been inside the county without any type of transportation incentive? And I think we all know the answer to that.
I don't know that it would have gotten done, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you add a fee, what happens?
Well, that depends on the developer, because some developers, like you said, are
You see what I'm-
surprised
You mean
that
they
we're not
build it or
charging
they
it.
s- or they
Would they have
not?
just not happened?
Right.
So that Publix would have not, if this would have existed then, would the Publix have gotten built, would it not?
Or the gas
Knowing what we
station
know.
at 77 in Baldwin, with $500,000 on top of that, would they have built that? No. See all these that are up here on this? These are all things that a single homeowner is not going to do. But somebody that's building a brand-new subdivision, and I'm okay with if we're going to put 50 lots there and all new, and that's going to impact the road. But if you make it so hard, so expensive, you're not going to get the development, you're not going to get the 50 lots. But all of these things right here, those can be in a development order requirement of the developer that's new, and/or phase in and proportionate share. Just like the guy on the Shelton at the end of John Pitts Road, that we just approved that fund. He's going to do a traffic analysis and then proportionate share on the phases as he comes in. That's in the development one.
Yeah, so a development order would overrule this traffic impact fee or transportation.
Or it could be the thing that we use instead of having it.
So the reason why they decided to move forward with the 2,400 square feet, the reason they drew the line there, I don't know why it was specifically 2,400, but that was because I don't think you're going to find affordable housing in the 2,400 square foot. If so, let me know, because I'd love to buy a couple, right? But the idea there is that then it wouldn't impact most of your infill. Right? If somebody's going to build a $1.8 million house on an infill lot, that's probably going to be bigger than 2,400 square feet. But that's also going to be a statistical one-off, right? I mean, statistically speaking, for infill, you're not going to see a lot of those as you are going to see houses that are 2,400 or less, right? That makes sense?
Would y'all say the average you build is 2,000 square feet or greater? Builders? 2,000?
Yeah, so that would be covered.
Okay, so
That would be
you're-
exempt.
You're covered under the exemption of 2,400.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's the reason for the exemption, is to not put this type of stuff, like you were saying, this single individual house on the infill builders, or the ones that are.
Right. This needs to be, if you're going to have a commercial development or residential development, it's never happened, never been there, or take something to a higher intensity, these are things that should be on the person doing that project, not on the single guy who goes and buys a house buys a piece of property and builds two houses on it.
But they're not. That's the problem. Right
know.
now, they're not.
I know.
And so how do we get there? This is one way. If you have another way,
I could argue an exemption for anything. I mean, hotels, we have less hotel rooms than we had before Hurricane Michael. So do we do a hotel exemption? I mean, affordable housing, there's not enough affordable housing in the city. We should definitely do affordable housing. We need a grocery store. We should do a grocery store. We need a coffee shop. We should do a coffee shop. So see what I'm trying to say? Like, after you get through it, like, you get down to vape shops. I mean, that's really what you get down to. I'm just saying, like, you get down to uses that you're already oversaturated with, as in what your constituents are telling you, hey, we don't want any more of these. Like, I have things that constituents get mad at me every time another one's built, and I could name them, and there's some people that build them in this room, and but like, there's a reality that comes of, like, I don't want to be the guy that stops a grocery store from coming in, that services the community and that services that. I don't want to be the guy that stops a coffee shop. It's going to be a place for people to make relationships. I don't want to be the guy that's going to force everybody to go to a different city because it's cheaper to go there, you know? But at the same time, like, I also know that there's a cost to it. And that's why I'm proposing, like, look, we can take and adopt the study. The study is valid.
Yeah.
It's very, very high. But then start looking through the categories, getting everybody's feedback now with a new commission on what's going to get exemption, what's not, what will get implemented, what won't. And then there'll be some things that we may not even get to. The housing may not be the first thing to tackle. It just may stay at zero until it's warranted. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Commercial's going to get smoked in this thing. Commercial real estate is.
Yeah.
Well, it won't if it's set at zero. There won't be anything that changes. So,
If not, it will.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, if I might just add, so I would agree and yield that a lot of these items won't happen in Panama City proper, but I do know that there are a lot of needs off of this screen in Panama City proper, and I've had conversations with all of you about this. New curbs, medians, shoulders, trying to keep people off lawns, putting curbs in. Panama City proper was not laid out with sidewalks, and we're all aware of, a couple of recent incidents where we really do need pedestrian safe walking areas around our community, and I know of new turn lanes that are needed. If you look at kind of like Harrison, State, Jinx, all the way down to like Frankfurt and Stanford. Some of those roads northbound and southbound coming up to 23rd Street, some of them have turn lanes and some of them don't. So potentially adding a turn lane in those areas would increase capacity and allow traffic to move forward. And those are things that we hear feedback on from citizens that use Harrison, State, Jinx, Frankfurt, Stanford, in order to commute from, downtown Panama City or southern Panama City up to the North Park, up to 390 to go to school. And so, I could sit down right now and come up with a number of items where we can use, a transportation impact fee. And I think the goal would be to utilize that for the bigger construction projects, the bigger efforts, and then use general fund more for like maintenance when concrete sections get, crack or fail, or we have to tear it up because of a utility cut or something like that. That's what I would see. If there's still this general fund philosophy, and I know Commissioner Street kind of alluded to it, and I think this is a conversation that we'll have as we work through the budget process, but, there is a desire to kind of pull back from the general fund floating as much. And yes, I don't think there's going to be as many like massive intersection overhauls, but there is a lot of these things that we can do in Panama City proper that will improve everybody moving, north, south, and east, west as they commute either out of or back into Panama City for a myriad of reasons: work, school, shopping, and traveling. And that's just an example there's just a few examples I came up with, very specific ones just sitting here right now.
I think that goes to the question I asked last time. Was a work program would also make this a lot easier. Now, I'm not saying, like, I think we talked, Mike and I, about how to do that by adopting an inland development code. These is what the transportation looks like, but we don't assign money to it, as you alluded to. So you can actually show people, hey, look, this is where the money's going. I mean, right now, it's very hard to say, hey, look, you got to come pay, whatever it is. But I can't point to what we're going to do with it. That's different.
I want y'all to think about the Cove all the way up to Sweet Bay, right? Or Candlewick, North Shore Phase 2. I want you to think about from the bridge all the way to Sherman. And all of the roads that are inside of that, all of the state roads, some of them are actually county roads still, but we own a lot of roads that are inside that geographical area. And now I want you to realize that Panama City North is bigger than that, right? It's if you superimpose Panama City North on top of Panama City proper, it's actually bigger. So when you think through what does that look like in the future, who's paying for all those roads to go in Panama City North in the future, right? Who is that? Is it going to be the general fund? Is it going to be the citizens of Panama City at large? Or is it going to be the developers that are building that stuff in that area. However we get there, whether it's through, development orders, development agreements, and some of the things you mentioned, or if it's through this, I don't want it to be the general fund. Does that make sense?
100%.
Right, so-
But we're never going to own the roads up there. Those are county and state roads.
already do.
No, state, we don't own John Pitts or.
No, we don't own that, is what we own the others.
I'm going into the subdivision.
Exactly.
I mean,
But none of those we paid to put in.
Right, we didn't pay to put those in, and.
And eventually,
Yes,
we'll
we
have
did.
to, just Mayor Committee, eventually, if we get to the point where, more than half of the people along that stretch of the road are in the city, we have an agreement with the county that we're supposed to accept that road.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, I
So
think-
we could eventually own some of those roads. I just want to,
23rd
depending on
should be
how
dirt
Panama
road.
City grows and annexes.
Okay. Minus redevelopment of sites, what in Panama City proper is going to create enough money to help do what you're talking about here versus Panama City North, which is brand new, not going to need a lot of work up front. Anything that gets done going forward, please make sure they have to do something with police, fire, ambulance, and/or commercial, because we didn't make that happen before, so that's a problem. But what's in Panama City proper that has the space to create a Sweet Bay type of place? We don't have it. So is the money going to be there in Panama City proper to take care of the roads, to your point, to get the general fund out of the deal?
I mean, we do have surtax too.
Well, that was my next point, is we just passed a surtax and kept it going, so we've got money coming in. Or was that 5 to 7 million a year? Is that right? 4? Okay. 4.9.
Yeah.
I mean,
Distract here.
I think on the roads, like as far as from a maintenance perspective, one, we have FEMA project. I think there's another side that FEMA didn't initially fund that we should probably do alongside that. I mean, that's a significant portion of our road network. I think it's like 25% of the road network would get repaved, just doing what we identified was damaged from Hurricane Michael, but capacity improvements are complex in an already existing area. That talks about eminent domain. That talks about all these other things that I mean, a sidewalk, yeah, I can see sidewalks doing it. I can see those things. I could see those things happening. But, I think at the end of the day, this is why I'm like, okay, this is a lot more complex than where we started in this conversation. And personally, I would be comfortable like either going category by category, but not implementing anything at this point until we can get through what we're exempting, what we're not.
You mean implementing all of it and setting it to zero?
Yes. Yeah. Essentially the
I
same
would
thing the
support
county does right now.
I would support
So-
that, implementing all of it, setting it to zero. What's that?
Yep.
Because I like that idea, with the exception of, it says in here that we could raise the cost of it.
That's the same thing for county.
So
Right,
one of-
okay. How often is that? I think it was every 4 years, I think? You can do that? But how much can you raise it up? Is there a cap on it?
It depends on how much you're raising and how much you can go by. It's 25% or 50% by supermajority vote consent. So, but I don't think that's the question y'all are asking.
No.
You're saying adopt this as it is.
Adopt your study as a valid finding of transportation need, basically. Hey, this is what the fees are, but all the fees are set to zero. So we can work through whatever conversations need to, I mean, the board has changed in its complete structure than when this started. Like, I mean, I can already tell there's not consensus.
Commissioner, what I understand you say is adopt the ordinance as it is with the fees that are in it so that we have the fees set. All of this discussion will continue later, but you will not begin to implement the fees. You won't begin to charge the fees until a later date.
Or we change the fee structure after adoption of the.
So
Yeah, I think I understand what your question is, Mike. I think what my question is, how is the county adopting it at zero? Like the
no,
transport?
they did just what I just said. They had it at.
Okay, so I'm
They have
talking
it
about the
under
same
books.
thing that currently exists under Bay County. Like they have a study that they update every 10 years. They do the same thing. Like this thing, it may always stay at zero. It may go up to something different.
So the way the ordinance that's before you, that you're discussing now is actually drafted is so that you have a graduated, you're going into currently you're not going to collect, but 25% we went back and forth a few times, so forgive me for not.
Yeah, I think what you guys were bringing back was 25%, but I think for me, 25% is too high.
Right, are we stuck with those numbers?
25.
Yeah, I think that's what you guys recommended.
We're gonna adopt the whole thing. We're gonna just delay collection of any fee or I would recommend some sort of.
And then you guys can bring back to us a category that it seems like we're all under consensus on. Like, if there's something that makes sense, then let's do that. Does that make sense?
Are we held to those numbers if we adopt it and put it at zero?
You can always go lower.
We can always, if we want to keep it at zero or make it a
Well, I
dollar,
guess
we
you
can
can't
do
go lower
that.
You're
than
gonna
zero.
go through the
He's saying
section
top of
signs
that
pretty
is
soon.
presented. You can always go lower.
Brandy's gonna suggest that you
Yeah.
advertise a higher millage rate. So
Brandy is?
Yes.
Okay.
So that you can't go above that in case there's some crazy thing that happens, or Jan maybe do that. So this is similar to that, is that
Yeah, you remember that? That was fun.
what I'm suggesting,
Cap, you're not gonna be able to go higher.
Yeah, so
but you're going to adopt this at the full rate, okay? But then you're going to say, we're not going to charge this fee for whatever time that you guys decide not to charge it. And then you'll be able to either graduate into it or go up to it, you won't be able to exceed it.
And my
If we don't adopt it, what's the, bad?
My encouragement would to start with Panama City North, sit down with the county with their transportation impact analysis, come to some type of agreement, and then if something needs to be addressed on either side of the table, it can be addressed, if that makes sense. So I think that's,
I think it's reasonable.
I mean, it's the same thing that exists in Bay County, so I don't know why anybody would be upset about that. But I mean, I guess they're,
What's the purpose of
Maybe to-
adopting the study?
I was just about to explain why it's
I think that's-
concerned about that. It's because under the statute, if you were amending your fee, you would only have 1 year from the time that the study began and came to you in order to adopt that fee. If you didn't adopt it within that time, you couldn't adopt a new fee, okay?
You have to go through the whole
You have
process
to go through the
again.
whole process all over again.
Okay.
We are in a different, of course, we're in a different standard because you don't have this fee. This is brand new. But we are now at 14 months,
16, yeah.
16 months of it. And so the data and analysis can begin to become stale. And so I believe you are reaching a time when you may need to start the process all over again. And the analysis, you're getting close to that. I don't think you're,
Mike, I think this might be the clarifying answer. Does the county have a transportation impact fee?
yes.
Do they have an ordinance on the books for a transportation impact
Yes.
fee? Do they have a study associated with transportation impact fee?
Yes,
Is it set at zero?
currently, yes.
Is there anybody like beating down their doors with 100 people in the room, complaining about transportation impact fee being implemented as they're doing a study, just exactly like we're doing right now?
The answer is not till next week.
I guess
Now
the
there will be.
point is,
I don't want to lock us into
Sorry.
something that
You're welcome.
I disagree with.
you're not locked in. What you're saying is you now have an ordinance on the book that allows you to assess a transportation impact fee should the commission choose to do that at some point in time in the future. It's the same thing that exists in the county currently. What it does provide you is, one, we spend a lot of money on a study that will be wasted if we don't adopt anything. Number two, it does provide you a mechanism to evaluate your transportation needs. And that is where the county has evaluated their stuff. Part of the reason why they have it on the books is if the surtax went away, guess what would happen tomorrow? You would see probably a 5-0 vote from the county commission to implement a transportation impact fee because they wouldn't have any money to do anything otherwise. And so that's why it still exists on their books. So I don't necessarily have a problem with it being on the books. I definitely have a problem with something being implemented that I think is going to either, one, double tax, it's not clear, or anything like that. So that's kind of where that's why I made the suggestion. I did not go and run this by the staff beforehand, but in the dialogue, it just seemed like we're nowhere near even a consensus on rejection or acceptance at this point.
And even if we adopt it, we still can create overlays?
Yes.
Right, okay. Just make sure my exemptions.
You can't,
So development orders can still happen and not use this and put it into a development order?
The difference between what you're talking about and this, you're talking about a concurrency issue. And that's what proportionate fair share does. Proportionate fair share says 23rd Street must be maintained at a level F or D or whatever. And because the guy at the end of the road, as Mr. Granger is talking about later on, is about to put in development, he's about to trip it into an unsustainable level. And so, Mr. Developer, now it's your obligation, if you want to build your development, to pay the amount that's proportionately fair to bring that road up to the acceptable level. And so that's the surprise I think that Commissioner Granger was talking about earlier, is it's the developer's now invested money, time, effort, everything, and goes to do it and says, oh, wait a minute, I've tripped the road. Well, the capacity on the road fails now. And so I'm not allowed to do my development. Most every jurisdiction that was adopted in 2013, is that when proportionate fair share?
11, yeah.
Before that.
Yes. Everybody in the state adopted a proportionate fair share ordinance. Then crashes and all happened, everybody got away from it. The other problem with the proportionate fair share was you were limited to roads. So switch that when we said, well, you used to be able to say you can't build because there's no concurrency. That truly did kill development, all right? Now what you've got is a mobility fee. Some jurisdictions, we're just calling this a plain old transportation impact fee. You're gonna hear some jurisdictions call it a mobility fee. It's the same. We just named it something else, okay? The mobility fee gives you the ability to do all of those things that he's got up there that he talked about. Intelligent systems, park and ride lots, traffic control devices, roadways, bike paths, those kind of things, because you're assisting capacity at that stage of the game. Proportionate fair share only looks at asphalt, maybe sidewalks.
But you could say up front, one or two of these things has to be done by that developer for that development. And they'll know up front.
That doesn't, the problem with that system is the developer is surprised.
And it's hyper-local.
What's that?
It's hyper-local as
Correct.
well.
Yeah, it can be, yes, it's limited to a certain roadway. This is, by collecting mobility fee, you can do all of these things that are, that massage capacity by installing an intelligent transportation system with AI, so that in the mornings when the schools are when everybody's going to school, you time the lights so that they're different and people move through and you get capacity advantages that way. Turn lanes can be, I hear we talk about turn lanes all the time. Turn lane, I'm stepping on Vincent's expertise, but I've already talked. So. Turn lanes can indeed be capacity improvements, but lots of times those turn lanes are put in because it's a safety hazard for the development that's going in. If you want to build you want to build Buc-ee's on 23rd Street, go ahead and build Buc-ee's on 23rd Street. We're going to make you put in a 400-foot turn lane so that we get people off the road, partly to help capacity, but partly because there's a safety element with doing that, okay?
And under proportionate fair share or this one, we can make them do that, or only in this scenario.
They're not going to know what are they. I'm being a little bit absolute, but I'll continue with it. They're not going to know what their proportionate fair share is until they walk in with their development plans. All right, so now they've purchased the land, they've gone through all of that, and they show up and they say, well, we're not going to build that.
Yeah.
That,
Or they've already gotten started.
yeah, we've already sold
towards
$1
it,
billion
yeah.
in design and engineering and purchase costs and everything else into this thing. And now we've got to, because we've tripped the roadway, now we're going to have to spend another $1 million to expand the roadway, put in other things. Not doing it.
So-
It really lost at that point in time.
If I'm tracking correctly, if we do as Commissioner Street is suggesting, that we stay with what the county has, we set up the potential for that scenario you just outlined.
Yes, ma'am, you do have the potential to do that. And I mean, honestly, you still have the potential to do that in some situations. But here you've at least created a bucket of money that's there that you can say, general fund, transportation fee, we need to go in and make these expansions to this roadway because we've tripped the concurrency levels now. But everybody's pitched in at that point in time. All of us that live here and have been paying ad valorem and all that kind of stuff, plus all the new folks that came in, they've chipped in for their new impacts to the system, and we make the roadway so that all of us can live and move around in Panama City.
The other thing this does using this system is it sets a rate, whatever that rate lands at, right? Or as Commissioner Street has suggested, that the rate should probably be zero right off the front end. But whatever we later then agree that it should be, everybody knows what the rate is. And there's not this, well, this developer came in and got a sweetheart deal, and this developer came in and maybe didn't get such a great deal out of us. And maybe that's because it's proportional share, and one developer is trying to do something on a road that isn't fully impacted, whereas the other developer is trying to do something on a road that is incredibly impacted already. So my point is it treats everybody the same, and I like that.
And you're referring to this proposed?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Shall we hear from the people?
So I know we've been in here a little bit over 90 minutes, so I'm going to suggest a quick 5-minute restroom break. I see some empty water bottles on the dais, and then we'll come back. But yeah, I would just say, please avoid conversations. Let's do a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll jump right into audience participation when we come back. Thanks. All right, we're now going to move into audience participation. If you'd like to make a comment to the commission and staff, please come up to the podium. You don't have to give your address, but if you will, just give your name and if you're representing an organization, just so we know who we're communicating with.
Good evening. Thanks for this conversation this evening. I'm Patrick Chapin. I'm the president and CEO of the Bay County Chamber of Commerce. I'm not sure if there's a Q&A or just comments.
It can be both, depending on what the commission would like, but you are going to be limited to 3 minutes.
Yeah,
So we
absolutely.
can make sure that everybody can have a chance to talk.
Okay, kind of random. These are just questions, observations. I want to make sure that I understand that Commissioner Street said adopt it and take it to zero. You asked if we could do that. Your attorney, Mr. Burke, said, he didn't answer the question. He said the county did this. So then you said,
Yes. He said yes.
well, I didn't.
Okay, the answer is yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
But then he is proposing that you adopt it, keep it at the fee, keep it at the higher fee and not charge. Is that correct?
What they propose to us right now currently is adopting it and then putting it at 25% with step increases. That's what I believe you guys had last proposed. And so what I counter proposed back was adopting it but setting it at zero. And then we would have further discussions as time went on, watching what happens with the county study, working through every other element, and maybe taking it category by category to look.
But set it at zero?
But set it at zero.
I think I know the confusion, if I can revert to time, the confusion is.
Yeah, if you'll, Sean, if you'll pause the clock, if either staff or the commissioners are speaking, thank you, sir.
Procedurally, what I'm suggesting that you do is you set the actual collection date of the fee off into the future so that it is effectively zero. But you don't say it's zero at this point in time. So you just set we're not going to collect this fee for 12 months.
And what would be the advantage? Because it's an arbitrary number at that point. I don't know right or wrong.
I don't know either.
I mean, the county, the question was, can we do it? The county had adopted and took it to zero. So I think that was the spirit of the conversation, but I'll leave that question for you guys to clear up.
Good question, Patrick. I'll want clarity on that as well.
I would at some point, I don't need it now, but I thought Commissioner Hughes, great question on the PC proper and what it could fund. I think I heard a couple, that's a great question. The infrastructure surtax dollars, does that impact these type of projects? I guess my question is, had we not had the infrastructure surtax pass, would you have raised the fees higher? Or would they come down because we passed it?
It's a brand new commission. We don't know what would.
Okay, rhetorical, not a rhetorical question, but I'm just.
I think, Patrick, your philosophy that you're saying is exactly what the county did. Like if the surtax would not have passed, the county would have implemented their full series of transportation impact fees because they would have had no other way to make improvements to the roadway.
Yeah, the recommendations, I believe, were recommended at a fee structure prior to the surtax being passed. So is the logic, therefore, if we have more money, should the surtax be? I don't need the answer now. I'm just, it seems to me like a logical question.
Just thinking out loud, I think the infrastructure surtax can be used for a lot more things than this transportation impact fee. We have a lot of roads in the city that have a lot of sewer and water underneath them that are failing. Whereas the county tends to not have sewer and water underneath their roads. And so it's much easier for them to just come through and mill and resurface.
Okay.
Whereas for us, we tend to have to address what's underneath first. And the infrastructure surtax can address all of the layers.
Okay, thank you. Two other quick things. I think it was something that didn't come up today, but or a couple things. One was, I think there's been a general feeling that maybe the bigger developers have the wallet to pay for a traffic study that could debate, or they hire the higher priced attorney and the exceptions may not be equitable. And then two more things, if I can follow my messy notes here. I guess I would just say, I think it boils down to, two things. The timing of all of this with the market and the tariffs. I mean, that didn't come up tonight, but it certainly is something you have to consider. So I'm not making a recommendation on behalf of the chamber, but certainly the concepts that have been discussed today, I would think would follow that concept of the housing market and the tariffs and so forth. And then lastly, and you probably don't have the answer, but out of those dozens, or let's call it less than 100 or close to 100, how many of those have raised their impact fees since they adopted them? Thank you. Right on the money.
Man, good timing. So I think we got a couple of questions we can address. So I note that in Mr. Spar, please correct me if I'm wrong, and Mr. Fuller, I believe the how much surtax money that we historically use for capacity was a factor in this study.
It was.
To answer that question, correct? Okay. And so, you know, I think staff's position would be, you know, really, we don't want to use surtax money to subsidize development or even new growth. That was sold to maintain existing infrastructure to the community. And so I think, you know, I would be reticent to even suggest that to this commission. So there was a question, I think, maybe for Mr. Fuller. The last one about
How many local governments that have, I'm sorry?
It was more for this gentleman
Oh.
who raised the concept that 100 communities have.
Oh, yeah.
I would have to do a lot of research to see how many have raised it. It's not a terribly common thing, except for in that sort of 10-year cycle where they are expected to kind of review their fees and see if they're still pertinent, applicable. One of the factors, the major factors really that contributes to the cost, the fees being where they are in our study, is the cost of road construction. And as you all probably know, road construction has increased in cost precipitously over the past, you know, forever, but even more so over the past 5 years. So that's a big reason for the costs being where they are.
Have the fees ever gone down? Probably not.
I mean, fees have been frozen frequently, as Mr. Burke alluded to.
Right.
There are
I mean,
communities where, whether be it a market concern or be it just hey, we really need to invite development right now, political changes, all kinds of things.
Right.
Fees can be frozen by ordinance.
For me, one of the things I will say, that's why the work program is so important to me to have, both on a resurfacing, 10-year resurfacing plan so that we have proper road maintenance, but also in what we're looking for, whether it be with bike trails, whether it be with sidewalks, whether it be with infrastructure, whether it be with, you name it, having a plan is what ultimately allows you to use surtax, merchant fee, general fund, whatever it is to accomplish. And so right now, we do not have a holistic plan. And that's something I do think that we need to have. And
So since we're here, and we can talk to each other legally, I absolutely agree. We need a work plan for the roads that we have in the city. What I would envision that to be is a 10-year plan that every single road in the city is addressed. Obviously, there are some that are in worse shape than others. There are some that have more needs than others. So I have some roads in my ward that are The underlying infrastructure is not that bad. There's not a lot of potholes. It's just the road hasn't been touched in 30 years. So it's starting to fall apart. The road itself is starting to fall apart. Meanwhile, I have similar to what y'all have in the Cove, where it's just pockmarked all over, and as soon as you touch the water or the sewer underneath it, 10 feet down, down, it's gonna pop again, and it's coming. And so the entire thing needs to be replaced. But yeah, we definitely need to have a 10-year plan to address every single road that's under the city's purview. So I agree with Commissioner Street on that, and I told staff that today, but I'm telling y'all because I can.
You mean a plan of how we're going to spend the money on these roads?
Well,
on these areas?
money is always going to be a problem, right? Because we're never going to have enough money to do what it is we want to do.
Right.
Think about it as if you owned 10 homes, right? And those 10 homes are going to need new roofs, right? But maybe they're in varying different shapes. Maybe one home is 5 years old, another home's 20 years old. But you're going to need to save up the money to fix that roof at a specific time, right? So what I'm looking for is we already have a study that shows the status of the asphalt. We already have a heat map that shows which roads have the worst issues, water, sewer, and asphalt, or just water and sewer, or whatever it is, right? Those things can be looked at, and we can have a plan set out for 10 years to address every single road. That will have a total dollar amount that's just guesstimated, and that we can use the infrastructure surtax money to help repair a lot of that as far as it'll go, right? That's the problem, is the money never goes as far as you want it to go, and you're always going to have more need than the money you have.
So the number one question on that, go ahead, ma'am, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, along that line, the new surtax that has just been adopted, thanks to the help of a lot of you all out there, we agreed as a commission to prioritize some of those parts of the city that have been left back, that have not been touched as we've moved forward with our implementation of downtown Panama City and so forth. So I want to put that back on the table. But I would also say, given that the heat map was done right after Hurricane Michael, starting with updating that as part of the 10-year look, so that we can reprioritize where the baddest situations are.
Mm-hmm. Number one question I'm asked is how are we going to spend the money? Where are we going to do it? Kind of similar to my the Upland the other night. What are y'all going to do? What's going to go there? We don't know the answer to that. But here, people really want to know. We're going to collect a bunch of money, put it somewhere, and what are we going to do with it? And we don't have the answer to that right now. Is that in your 10-year plan?
Yes.
We're highlighting.
That is the 10-year plan.
We
Yes.
put sidewalks over here. Okay.
Well, I mean,
I like that. We're going to have an idea.
we've had deferred maintenance now for probably my entire lifetime in the city.
Pretty much since my dad's age group.
So it's not a problem that's going to be fixed overnight. It is a problem that needs to be addressed, and it is a problem that needs to be addressed in all 4 wards. And without a plan, the money is going to get spent, and it's not going to be spent as efficiently as it probably could be, and address some of the areas that have needed to be touched for a long time.
I.e. those roadways and neighborhoods that still have 2-inch corroded down to a 1/2-inch water lines.
It solves the problem of citizens saying, when's my road getting fixed? And we go,
Exactly. That would be an amazing tool if when somebody says, when is this insert name of road going to get fixed? You can look it up and go, well, we have that scheduled for 2030. And then they're going to get upset over that, right? But like
Just gave an answer.
at least it's an answer.
at least you know it's coming. And yeah. So, sorry, I just wanted to kind of take a moment because we don't get to talk about this kind of stuff outside of these meetings. So, and that's similar, it's an adjacent topic. Thank you.
All right, next.
My name's Jim Everett. I'm a commercial real estate broker here in Bay County, and I have been for a long time, longer than some of you are old. I hate to say that. Is there a way, real quick, Michael, I'd like to thank you and Jonathan for the help you have given us and allowed us to participate in some of the meetings. Is there a way to pull up page 14 of the,
Of the presentation?
yes, of the report, final report?
Of the ordinance or the presentation?
Oh, all we have is the, excuse me, all we have is the presentation from Kimberly Horn. I'm sorry.
You might this page
Yeah.
right here.
Okay, you don't have
This?
the page 14 of the final study that was done? Is that what
I mean, we don't have it digitally. Sorry,
Okay, all right.
apologies.
Well, primarily, I think y'all are trying to address the residential side. It's important to us that you look at the commercial side very careful. We took page 14 and tried to convert that to dollars and cents as to what you were talking about, a transportation impact fee on different types of development, and we just chose a few to be able to let you understand what you were really talking about if you implemented this tax as is. If you were to do a 125 unit hotel, you're talking about an additional $268,000 for transportation impact fee. You probably just made that development economically unfeasible. If you wanted to do a daycare center, which we need desperately, if you've done a 75 student, and I do not have a clue as to whether they're 250 or 50 or what, but I think that 75 would probably be a low minimum. You talking about on a small independent person trying to create a daycare center, you're going to put another $62,000 on them. They can't do the deal. They're going away on us. If you was to do an outpatient clinic, like the one up on 231, we use that square footage as an example, the new one. You got another $231,000 that you're going to impact them for the transportation. But jump on down to your Publix on 231. You're talking about an impact fee there of $1,700,000 on a 50,000 square foot Publix. What you really are doing with these fees, and believe me, we understand, definitely, we understand that Panama City and the county, we're all hurt, and we know that. But these fees are moratoriums, is what they really are, y'all. That's what you really done. You're putting a moratorium on development, and it'll be over. It'll be anti-development, and it'll be not business friendly. We all know since Hurricane Michael and COVID that horizontal costs, vertical costs have continued to go up, but at the same time, interest rates have doubled. So in the free enterprise system, our costs have gone so far that it's almost impossible for a private developer to do developments. You almost got to be a regional or a national developer to be able to carry the construction cost, horizontal, vertical. I got it.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Please review this, think about it, and
I'm just proud that you made this table for us, Jim, on your computer.
yeah, as you move forward, we'd like to continue to be involved.
Absolutely.
That's good. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
The young one back there did it, yeah.
All right. Anybody else like to make a comment?
Point.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Marzello. I'm the division president for the home builder D.R. Horton. Our business accounts for 30 to 40% of all homes being built in Bay County, period. We're the largest home builder you guys got in town. And obviously, this has got probably the largest impact on me and my business out of anyone that's going to be in this room. Obviously, I want to say that you're using the word developer in this conversation, but who's going to pay this money is the builder. You're going to charge this when I go to pull a permit, not when the developer is developing it. So your high-end developer, this ain't his game, this is my game. This is going to be directly passed on to the consumer. Don't think it's not, because it is. It is a fee that I'm going to have to pay as I pay your permitting fee and everything else. I'm going to pass this straight on to the consumer. Ask everybody in this room. We are having the worst year we have ever had. The last 2 years and the year coming forward are not good years for the home building business. You guys know how bad the interest rates are. You're talking about affordable housing. The reason why they can't afford it, we're paying 7% interest on those houses at $250,000. You've knocked everybody out. And that's not our issue here, but you're adding cost to my build. When at a time when these people cannot even afford what I'm building now. So I think you're adding a huge impact to what you're going to do. The land value within the circle where you've got a little area on the north side and you've got the county surrounding it. If I own a piece of property within the circle, you've just made my value less than the guy next door. If this is the road and the city's one side, county's the other side, this guy's value just went down. You're hurting your people who are paying your taxes. The other thing is in Panama City already, and I'm going to use my Liberty project versus your Mars Hills project. My customers are paying $1,300 more when they pay their property taxes to live within the city than they do to live outside of the city today, right now. I have 1,900 houses in Liberty. That's $2.5 million per year my customers are paying to the city that the county people are not paying today. I'm already giving you $2.5 million more money. Now you're asking us to give you more. And I just think that's a little unfair for the people in the zone that you're calling on the north side. We're supposed to be encouraging. We want business growth here. We want residential growth. We want growth. We want the money. We want the property taxes. Property taxes are huge to you guys. And now you're telling me you want to limit the number of people that want to pay the property taxes and the number of businesses that we're going to bring into town that creates jobs so that we don't have affordable housing because these people actually make money. And now we're telling them that we're going to impact them. I got 18 seconds left. All I'm saying is I think you need the money. I think your amount that you're asking for is too much. It's higher than South Walton, and they've got multi-million-dollar homes. The last thing I want to say is how many houses under 2,400 square feet and over are being built? What are you really going to do here? I mean, how many? If 90% or 95% are under 2,400 square feet, how much money are you really going to generate?
Right.
Versus if you do a smaller amount, charge everybody, you might be able to generate more money.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Sorry.
Anybody? Brian? Hey.
Hi, I'm Brian Knox with Coastal Classic Homes. I'm a residential contractor. I'm on the board of the Bay Building Industries Association. I'm not as big as D.R. Horton. I am a local, I own my company and we've been building here for the past 5 years. And I'm going to echo, I ditto everything that gentleman just said. A couple big concerns that I still have is Panama City North, Panama City proper, wildly different places. The way you can't blanket treat everything the same. Also, when you talk about the development, this is a tax on development. He is a different developer than I am. I'm developing onesie, twosie lots at a time. And for me to pay that extra $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on one single lot that I build is like you said, is being passed directly to that consumer. It is raising prices, and it is in this climate, it is just not sustainable. The other thing about the exemption, we're talking about exempting existing lots. If I go and split a lot, the existing lot of record does not get the tax if it's under 2,400 square feet, but if the new lot, that new lot will get the tax. Still doesn't help anything. We're talking about targeting that missing middle. Wipe it out for new or existing. If it's a big master plan community, I get it. That's a different animal. But for us smaller developers that we represent in the BBIA, the majority of us are small local builders and developers. It makes no sense for us there. The other question I have is, and this is really for Mr. Spar, does your formula work for one single home that I develop on a vacant lot in Kings Point? Does that translate, or is it just for really these large new developments?
The whole objective of the study is to sort of look at everything in the aggregate, and so it does account for and evaluate the direct impacts to this transportation network of one individual lot. However, in terms of considering and how it was considered in the study, it was looked at, like I said, in the aggregate of all developments everywhere and all the impacts those would cost and how much it would cost to provide capacity for new roadways.
Okay. Well, I look at the majority, sort of what Commissioner Hughes was talking about, majority of the development, new development that's going to happen in Panama City proper is not large developments. It's going to be people like myself, people like our association represents, building these infill lots, and which are not adding significant impact to any of these existing roads. I absolutely do think we need a work plan. We've been asking for 6 months for a list of how much money are you trying to raise? Do you need $1 million? Do you need $10 million? Do you need $100 million? No one's ever given us a direction of how much y'all are trying to raise. And also, how many homes are you projecting, how many permits are you projecting to be pulled in the next 1, 3, 5 years? Is it going to pay for this? Is it going to even make a dent in this? And so those are concerns that we have been asking for and we think we need before we can get on board with any sort of fee.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Who's faster?
Sorry.
My money's
Who's going to win?
Yeah, there you go. All right. Sorry, I just got back from Italy, and so it's 1 o'clock in the morning on my time. So, but anyways, my name's Maureen Johnson. I represent Garden Street Communities, Adams Homes. We have. We're doing Park Brook in the city. I appreciate everybody here in the city, all your staff. They've done a great job. They've made me 85% happy, which probably means they're doing a fabulous job for the city. So I can't echo enough the fees that I'm seeing, particularly we've got one that's in front of the city right now, townhomes, you know, the impact fees that I'm seeing for those, you know, we look at a townhome as an opportunity for somebody to get in the housing ladder. You know, a $4,000 impact fee on that is huge. I mean, it's basically the difference of doing the project or not. $5,000, these numbers, what we're doing to try to, you know, get our development costs, you know, everyone's saying how much a road costs. Obviously, for our projects, the cost of infrastructure have gone up so substantially. We've got to put that into our lot cost, and it obviously translates to our builders and our homeowners. But all of these fees, we're trying to figure out a way to save $200 here and $500 here to make up this $5,000. So to get homeowners in these houses, because they really, with the interest rates where they are at, they can't afford them, and we're getting squeezed so bad that the profits just aren't there. And just as my background, I'm a professional engineer. I did land development on my own for a long time. It used to be a high risk, high reward situation. It's really now just high risk, low reward, which is why I think you're seeing a lot of independent developers fall out of the market. It's just not worth it. And I've seen these impact fees with so that's on these impact fees here are just they're just too high. You know, in Okaloosa County, they have a $1,500 impact fee that they've just recently passed. It's sort of solid. They got away from all the traffic negotiations to make it easy to underwrite. It seems to be working. That's still probably a little high, but at least it's something you can kind of get your head around. And then the commercial impact fees, when I was doing engineering in Walton County, back before the big crash happened, we had doctors, vets, dentists, daycare centers come in asking, can I do this project? Can I, you know, an independent doctor wants to go out and start their family practice. A vet wants to do their own clinic. And really figuring out what the traffic fees were, $40,000, $50,000, these numbers killed the deal every single time. So, you know, I think that for Panama City North, what I see is an opportunity for some commercial growth, some great housing, some interconnecting of streets. But these fees are really, I think you're really, you know, Mr. Everett here, I think your realtor that says the moratorium is right on the money.
Yep.
But thank you.
If you would hang tight 1 second, and I'm going to put you on the spot because I also know that we had some challenges with your development.
Yeah.
I think you would agree that you would have appreciated on the front end knowing what some of your transportation costs were going to be, rather than coming in on the back end and costing you money. If you won't mind speaking to that yours was kind of one of the examples that Commissioner Granger And so, yeah, I think this could have provided a level of clarity perhaps that would have made your project smoother. Is that fair?
Yeah, I do. I think so. I think that even with all the challenges, we weren't hitting these numbers on the impact fees. I think, working with the county, obviously that's where the pinch point really comes, is connecting to the county, what kind of infrastructure improvements they want, those type of things. So, it's kind of what Okaloosa County has done, is they were running all these traffic studies to pay for their bypass. And all the money was going to the bypass, and I understand where it was going. They finally went to, you do a very simple traffic analysis at your connection point, looking at that operational at that connection point, and now you just pay a $1,500 fee minus your, you get to deduct your improvements to the road, like turn lanes, that kind of stuff, to the road you're connecting on. So it became a lot clearer and easier. And the county, and on that side, they have capital improvement plans that they're, feeding in addition to the surtaxes, in addition to, grants and working with the TPO, that they are doing bigger projects in that situation. So, I think that is, if you can get the county on board with that, I think it's great. There's the big if. But like I said, the number over there is about 1,500. Walton County, I think, is around 3,000, but those houses go for $750 to $1,000 a square foot in South Walton. So, that's the kind of numbers that are supporting that. So,
Thank you, Maureen. I appreciate it. Anybody else? Katie?
Thank you, Katie Albritton, CEO for the Central Panhandle Association of Realtors. First of all, I want to echo all of the gratitude that towards the commissioners and the staff for having these very thoughtful conversations for 7 months now. And also, we're very appreciative for the concessions that were made in reference to residential and the obvious need for affordable housing. I will spare you the redundancy on our thoughts and feelings on the fees themselves, because listening to your conversations, it seems that you all are in agreement with that, and the fees are a problem. So I more so have a question. If you were to adopt the study as is and set it to zero, in the future, when you start trying to determine if you want to add those fees back in and where and how, what does that look like in practicality? Are members of the public notified that these certain areas may be imposed? Do you have opportunity for public input? Does it just come up on a commission agenda and then it's voted on that day? What would that look like in following statutorial process?
That 2 meetings?
I bet there's going to be a lot of public input this time.
2 meetings?
Yeah, you'd be adopting an ordinance.
Yeah, so the ordinance change would be
And then
required
you
to
go
be
to the
2.
planning board as well, because it's a
3 meetings.
land use.
So 3 meetings.
3 meetings. And
Planning
then,
board, proper notice, and then obviously
like a-
2 readings at a city commission meeting.
Like a zoning change.
and so, right, so then how would you all start to come to studying this? Like vape shops need to be charged and gas stations don't, or, like how do you, I know we're going to keep coming back to that. Is there a work group put together to start looking through that? Or do you just let it sit at zero for a couple of years and see what your fund's doing? Or maybe you don't even know the answer to that question, but I'm just trying to think past, an initial vote and what that all looks like in practicality.
So I think that question was what I posed to Michael in our break, was like, okay, so how do you get from everybody like all over the map to like something that's consistent? He didn't have an answer for it. I don't know that I've got a good answer for that either, Katie, but I do think that if we just focus on one specific area, it's a whole lot easier to make something simple if you're not trying to address the
All
whole.
at once.
And so maybe housing isn't the thing that we tackle in a year, or maybe that's 2 years from now. I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it would be the staff's responsibility to build consensus with us on what we want to go with first, and then start with that. But I would love to see public input on whoever's affected by it. That's the big key.
And then if you imposed a fee, would you go with whatever was in the study, or would you modify it, or you guys get to decide at the time?
We would probably modify it. I think there's enough consensus up here that tonight that we would probably modify
I
it
don't
to
know,
be a
vape
lot.
shop may get 100%. I don't know.
Except the vape shop. Got it. All right. Thank you for your time.
Sorry if you vape here tonight.
Or
Thank
if
you,
own a
Katie.
vape shop.
Well, they're already here, so it doesn't matter to them.
Anybody else like to make a comment to the commission? And Garrett?
Mayor, Commissioners, thanks for having this workshop. Y'all, it boils down to economics, and I'm fortunate enough to build residential and commercial. I sit across the table every other day with people building both products, and I'm not going to reiterate everything they said. They're all right. I mean, I can sit across from someone, $70 a month is going to break a deal. I'm talking to a dentist now about doing a build out. If you put impact fees on them of a 5,000 square foot build out, it's like, I had it written down, it's 50 or 100 grand, right? The building's already there, we're modifying just a little bit. That's not reasonable. That will kill the deal. That will kill the deal. So you just need to realize that the builders are being pinched. The material volatility right now is unbelievable. We don't know which way it's going. People are not buying like they should be or want to be. And I recommend a work program. I mean, if you can come to us and say, hey, this is what we want to do, this is what you're paying for, maybe that makes sense. But we've asked and asked, and no one can say, hey, yeah, we need this, we need this, we need this, X amount of money, X amount of money. You got to have a budget. I mean, you just don't go spend money or ask for money but not have a plan. No one does that, right? You know, I go buy a beer at History, I know what I'm getting, right? So I recommend you don't pass this ordinance, all right? You're not ready, you don't have a game plan, you don't have a work plan, you don't know how much money you need. And if you go ahead and pass it at this rate, then you're gonna try to put it down at zero, and it's ongoing and ongoing, ongoing. The comparative study, the nexus ratio, in my opinion, is broken. You're penalizing someone who wants to build up north Panama City. So you don't want to build a Sam's up there? You want them to come all the way back down here 20 miles? Why? Why not build the Sam's up there? Alleviate all that traffic. So I don't understand the comparative study, except it's just a comparative study. The nexus ratio is based on no one can figure it out. So I'd recommend take a step back. I think you're going to kill the golden goose if you approve this, and try to figure out a work plan, see what you really need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. Any other comments? All right, seeing no movement. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, back to y'all. Unless, call it a night.
We're not going to vote here tonight.
No.
No
comments.
No voting at the no voting at a workshop.
You ordered pizza?
Next meeting?
Yeah. So the second reading right now is set for July 22nd, which is at 5:30 p.m. Don't get here at 4. You'll sit here for an hour and a half. Yes.
It's his fault.
5-0 vote, Mr. Commissioner. It was a 5-0 vote. So, all right. Well, if there's no additional comments from the elected officials, thank y'all so much for coming. The workshop is now ended.